And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks for streaming with us. The NTSB investigating what caused an Amtrak train to derail and split apart, killing 3 people and injuring more than 50 others. The train derailing near Joplin, Montana. More than 150 people on board, sending passengers flying through cars, some escaping by breaking windows. It's a high-stakes internal standoff. President Biden's infrastructure agenda at risk as House Democrats remain divided on spending. The White House working to unite progressives and moderates as President Biden faces a critical week ahead of key votes in Congress, starting with the bipartisan infrastructure package. This is the $1 trillion package that includes funding for roads, bridges, and broadband internet. But progressive Democrats say they will sink that bill unless their party passes a much larger economic package. All this as the country heads toward a government shutdown unless Congress approves a measure to keep the government funded. Treasury Secretary Yellen saying if Congress does nothing, the government will not be able to pay its bills, sending the country into a debt crisis. And dramatic new video of that volcano still spewing lava and ash on the island of La Palma, Spain. The seismic activity touching off a rock slide of that lava, toppling a church. Scientists saying the eruption on the volcanic Canary Islands could last for months now. But we begin with the vaccine mandate for New York healthcare workers as it's going into effect, and hospitals even fearing massive staff shortages at the same time. All of this happening as Pfizer booster shots have begun rolling out after the CDC signed off on a 3rd shot for millions of Americans. Stephanie Ramos is outside a Brooklyn hospital with the latest.
This morning, with the deadline just hours away for all New York State healthcare workers to get vaccinated, officials taking drastic action to prepare for mass firings and staff shortages. The governor prepared to bring in out-of-state workers, even the National Guard, to help. An estimated 72,000 hospital workers are not vaccinated. Nurse Tricia Sebastian is one of them.
We're trying to do what is at the best interest for our families. The majority of the nurses that I have spoken to that remain unvaccinated are sticking to their guns.
This comes just days after a federal judge temporarily blocked New York City public schools from implementing a similar vaccine mandate for teachers and staff. Teacher Asia Levystone says she is not getting the shot and is prepared if the ruling is reversed.
I'm going to be terminated. It's going to be my last day.
In Massachusetts, the State Police Association said dozens of troopers are leaving their jobs after a judge denied a request to delay the state's vaccine mandate. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are rolling up their sleeves, receiving a 3rd Pfizer shot after the CDC gave the green light for those 18 and older who have an underlying condition, as well as anyone 65 and older, along with frontline workers like nurses and police officers.
I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to get the booster.
Pfizer says it is now just days away from delivering their data to the FDA, arguing for the use of their vaccine on children who are 5 to 11 years old.
If they approve it, we will be ready with our manufacturing to provide this new formulation of the vaccine. It is almost not almost, it's 1/3 of the dose that we are giving to the rest of the population.
Pfizer CEO also says it is possible to provide both the COVID booster shots as well as doses for people who have not yet been vaccinated. Kira.
Stephanie Ramos, thank you so much. All right, let's bring in Dr. Alok Patel, physician at Stanford Children's Health, for more on this coronavirus emergency. Dr. Patel, always great to have you with us, parsing through all of this. Let's talk about the mandate. And as it goes into effect now, there are still about 72,000 people holding out. As Stephanie mentioned, the governor is now talking about even bringing in healthcare workers from other states or even the National Guard in anticipation of the staffing shortage. So what do you expect to come from this? And what does it say about whether these vaccine mandates can actually work?
Well, Kira, by and large, I do think that there's still going to be some people who just resist and say that we're not going to get the vaccine no matter what and are prepared to lose their job because of it. And it's unfortunate because if anyone has seen the horrific effects that COVID-19 has had on the population, and now with unvaccinated individuals, it's people working in the hospital. But one thing that I want everyone out there to understand is that when we're looking at healthcare professionals, that represents a whole huge group of people working in hospitals, a large demographic, which in many ways is representative of the country at a whole. When I look at my physician colleagues, over 90% of them have gotten the vaccine. The vast majority of nurses and nurse practitioners I know have gotten them as well. And so, it's a false signal when people look at these protests and say, oh, look, healthcare professionals aren't getting the vaccine. That means we don't have to either, because this still represents a minority of people. I think some people will get it because of the mandate, but unfortunately, we will lose some essential workers because of this.
Which is a shame. And meanwhile, a federal judge has temporarily blocked New York City public schools from implementing a similar vaccine mandate for teachers and staff. So how will this impact the spread of COVID in New York City classrooms, you think?
Well, fortunately, above 80%, I believe, of people working in that school district, these are teachers, have gotten the vaccine. And New York has a very high rate of vaccine-acquired immunity. And also there is some natural immunity in New York City as well, which we can't discount. But I do worry that, with the federal judge blocking the vaccine mandate, all it takes is one teacher, one staff member to potentially infect an entire classroom of kids who are not eligible for the vaccine. And that's something that's very scary to think about, that it just takes one person. We've seen this case happen multiple times. So I do hope that, let's say that teachers aren't vaccinated. I hope that they're at least using the other methods of layered protection, ventilation, masks, distancing, the things that we've been using for a year and a half until they make the right choice and go out and get vaccinated.
So the Pfizer booster shot, as we've been talking about, is available for people ages 65 and up. This was the big news last week. And those with underlying conditions, also healthcare workers. What's your message to those eligible? And what do you think about this and what it means for boosters for people who don't fall into those categories?
Well, Kira, there's been so much confusion about the booster shots since, I'm tempted to say since May, but especially over this weekend. My message for anyone out there who is eligible is, if you haven't already gone out and gotten the booster shot, the reason that you are eligible is because you are falling into a high-risk category, either because of an underlying medical condition or because you're someone like me who's working in a hospital and still seeing COVID-positive patients. Look, I'm still wearing my scrubs from the hospital last night. These are going to go in the washing machine right after this hit. But there's a reason why we're eligible, because we have to do our best to protect ourselves. For people who are not eligible and are waiting, that decision should come out very soon. But if you aren't sure about where you fall, the most important thing you can do is talk to your healthcare professional about it and figure out what the best path is for you.
But even if you don't get the booster, you still are very well protected, right?
I'm so glad you said that. And that's an important unified thread that has been maintained this entire year through all the confusion. And that's something that everyone needs to understand, is if you don't get a booster shot, all the data still shows that you have an incredibly high protection against severe hospitalization or death, which is what matters, which is what the vaccine was created for. So even though there's been a little bit of distress sowed because of the conversations last week, one thing has not changed, and that's the vaccine will still keep you out of the ICU.
Okay. And as you know, Pfizer's CEO was out there today doing interviews saying that his company is just days away from delivering its data to the FDA for emergency authorization for kids ages 5 to 11 for them to get the vaccine. If approved, what could that rollout look like for these kids? And are you concerned about side effects?
If approved, this could actually be a game changer in terms of keeping kids in the classroom. And the timing couldn't be more critical. So, Kira, if the data comes in a few days and we potentially, there's going to be a lot of data. It's going to take the FDA several weeks. And we see a rollout by around Halloween, which is what was predicted, we could potentially have these kids age 5 to 11 protected until when winter comes around. So cold flu season, but also colder weather. People are going to be going indoors, which is when kids need even more protection. We're seeing the Delta variant basically shuffle around the country going to unvaccinated populations, and it's absolutely targeting kids, with 26% of new cases being in kids. And when it comes to side effects, a lot of people, including myself, including parents, are paying close attention to see more data, which the FDA will hopefully release and we'll get report of. Because last week, all we saw was that, we saw the anecdote that it didn't produce a lot of adverse side effects according to the press release, and it gave a really good antibody response. But we need to see more data. We have to be evidence-based when it comes to supporting this vaccine, and that is our intention.
Dr. Alok Patel, great seeing you today. Thanks so much, Doc.
Likewise. Thank you.
Well, jury deliberations have begun in the R. Kelly trial as the disgraced singer faces racketeering and sex trafficking charges. The prosecution saying he used lies, manipulation, threats, and physical abuse to dominate his victims, and he used his money and his public persona to hide his crimes in plain sight. Kelly denies the charges, his defense arguing the government allowed witnesses to lie, saying many of them accusing Kelly of sexual and physical abuse were in consensual relationships with the singer and are now trying to monetize their testimonies. Let's bring in host and legal analyst at Law and Crime Network, Terry Austin, for more on a trial that a lot of people are paying attention to. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Kira. Thank you.
All right. So the jury deliberated for hours on Friday before the case was adjourned until today, and they have not yet reached a verdict. So we also know that the jury asked for evidence related to one of the witnesses. So what factors is the jury considering right now, and what are some of the standout parts from the trial so far likely to stick out to them?
I think everybody is watching to see what these questions are going to be about. The first question, as you correctly point out, was about one of the victims. Sonia was her name. And that victim actually testified that she was sexually assaulted by him, and she testified that she was locked up and that he abused her, and she was afraid to talk about it before. She said that she ate something, she felt faint, and I think that the jury wants to determine why she didn't come out before this, because it happened years ago, and also whether or not she could actually escape. They asked for the floor plan of the studio where she was being kept. So I think they are very carefully looking at all 11 of the victims, 9 of whom were women, 2 were men, and they are really trying to determine whether or not this was consensual or whether or not this was rape or something against the will of these women.
So, Terry, you may remember earlier this month, Kelly's executive assistant of 16 years, Diana Copeland, spoke out about what she says she saw inside Kelly's homes, including live-in girlfriends. How do you think that her testimony impacted this case and will continue to impact the case?
I think someone who is working so closely with Kelly, who is his executive assistant, who has seen him every day while she was working for him, has an impact on the jury. They are going to understand that she saw what was going on. Unlike the 5 witnesses that the defense put on, they didn't see anything that was going on behind closed doors. On the other hand, I thought she was a bit sort of even-handed. It was almost as though she wanted to say what the truth was in terms of what was going on behind closed doors, what she knew, but at the other hand, she didn't really come out and say anything that was extremely damaging to him, as I think she could have been even more so. She also had some interviews that were outside of the courtroom. So I think the jury is looking at her as though she had an inside view and wondering whether or not things were as bad as she said, or actually could have even been worse when it was behind closed doors.
Well, and then you have this documentary series, Surviving R. Kelly, and it's featuring women giving very detailed accounts of the alleged sexual and mental abuse. How does this documentary series, as well as the public scrutiny of R. Kelly, play into all this as well?
You know, I think it's interesting because some of the jurors actually said they did not see Surviving R. Kelly, which is the documentary that we're talking about. But I think for the most part, everyone in the public has seen that, and everyone has heard all of these women who are talking about, all the way from the first witness who got on the stand, Geronda Price, and she actually was in the documentary. And I think that they are seeing it's not just one, but it's multiple people. And when you have so many people saying the same thing, their testimony was really virtually the same, and they said the same thing in the documentary. They said he was controlling, he was abusive, they made him call him daddy, that he, spanked them, that he withheld food. They weren't supposed to be looking at men. And when you have everyone saying the same thing, I think that is definitely going to work against R. Kelly. When you're in the public and you are subject to all of these different allegations on television, people can actually watch it. I think it does have an impact. At the end of the day, people start to believe what they see.
We'll follow it along with you, Terry Austin. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, coming up, Robin Roberts sits down with Anita Hill 30 years after her groundbreaking testimony about then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas and what she refers to as gender violence. When we come back, a look at where we've been and how far we need to go. And welcome back to ABC News Live. I'm Kira Phillips. It has been 30 years since Anita Hill testified before a Senate Judiciary Committee about being sexually harassed by then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas. Facing a panel of 14 men, Hill told her story, gripping the nation. In her new book, Believing Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence, Hill reveals how that day changed her life and sparked a national conversation. ABC News' Robin Roberts has more.
Thank you for believing, and thank you for this book. I read it cover to cover. It's something that men and women should read to have a better understanding. Gender violence. Explain why you term it like that.
I started out with sexual harassment, and I thought that was sort of the issue that I would deal with. But I started hearing from people who were telling me about intimate partner violence. And then there were people who wrote me and spoke about their experience with sexual assaults and rape. And what I started to understand was that there was this connection and that you couldn't really separate them because at the heart of it was the same problem. And so in order to really capture this huge problem that we have, I chose the term gender violence.
And you did not set out for this to be your life's work. But then 30 years ago, when you look back at testifying in front of Congress about Clarence Thomas, how did that impact your life?
Well, it changed just about every aspect of my life.
When I was asked by a representative of this committee to report my experience, I felt that I had to tell the truth. I could not keep silent.
I had no intention of becoming a crusader. I wanted to go back to my job teaching, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I had a conversation with Andrew Young, who talked to me about how hard it is to take on a cause that is not one of your own choosing. And it was that kind of empathy and encouragement that really led me to just to find my own path and just charting a new course for my life.
Anita Hill took a stand and educated a nation after accusing then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment in 1991. Thomas denied Hill's allegations. Also in the room, President Joe Biden, then serving as chairman of the all-male Senate Judicial Committee. In 2019, Biden calling Hill to share his, quote, regret for what she endured. What did that apology mean to you?
Well, the apology was a long time coming. It took almost 30 years. I'm not sure that he quite understood how much harm the Senate hearings and his control, lack of control of those hearings did to all of us. I think, unfortunately, the personal apology wasn't enough. What I really wanted was somebody who was going to commit to doing something about this massive problem of gender violence that we have in this country that's hurting everyone.
Christine Blasey Ford, when you heard her testimony all those years after yours, what was going through your mind?
I wanted it to be better for her. I wanted the outcome to be better. I wanted the process to be better. The process wasn't much better. It wasn't fully investigated. But my thought was really, this is going to change your life forever. But she did a really brave thing coming forward, and I think we all benefited from her testimony.
Hill also applauding efforts like the Me Too movement, founded by Tarana Burke in 2006, in helping propel forward the conversation of gender violence, now stressing a call to action for accountability and systemic change. As lawmakers, as employers, as the public, how do we change the narrative?
Well, we can, first of all, change the narrative culturally and stop telling people, telling children that what's happening to them is not so bad, because that keeps people from coming forward. You know, people ask me, it's my advice to everyone to come forward who has a complaint. And I still am not at the point where I can say I advise everyone to come forward. I don't. What I advise people to do is understand the process that you're coming forward into, because we still have processes that are not necessarily meant to solve the problem of sexual harassment or rape or sexual assault. We've got to change the processes if we in fact want people to feel confident and trust that they are going to be treated fairly when they go into them.
And my final question, believing. So what is it that you're believing for the future when it comes to this all-important issue?
I'm believing that change is possible. I'm believing that we deserve better. We deserve better systems. We deserve better attention. We deserve leadership that will call out and acknowledge this problem for the public crisis that it is. I'm talking about the president, as well as the president of and CEO of every company and university. Make that commitment to use your resources to stop this problem, and I believe that we can do it.
And our thanks to Anita Hill and also Robin Roberts for that interview. Believing our 30-year journey to end gender violence is now going to be available tomorrow. Well, the pandemic has really taken a toll on the hospitality industry, forcing a lot of bars and restaurants to close their doors. But as we all know, we are America Strong, which has led us to some pretty remarkable people, like this chef that ABC's Will Gans had the honor to profile.
In the cutthroat world of fine dining and high-caliber cuisine, New York City's most in-demand chef is Nona Maria? Nestled just across the river from Wall Street, right past Lady Liberty, Enoteca Maria, serving up your grandma's greatest dishes. Well, maybe not your grandma, but grandma's nonetheless, or Nonas, as they're lovingly called here. Some from Italy, some from Greece, Sri Lanka, Argentina, Japan, and beyond, to serve up their specialties.
Breaking bread with different cultures, you really get to connect on a way that you didn't before. So, and these ladies love to come out of the kitchen and they love to ask you how you like their food.
When customers come in and they're getting a home-cooked meal, do you think that they feel like they're at home?
Yes. That's why I come, because I just like in my house over here.
But just a year ago, the restaurant, like many in New York City, had to close its doors.
Our cooks are grandmothers, so we had to really just shut down.
A restless soul, Jody couldn't sit still during lockdown, so he began making soup every Saturday for his community.
We would give out soup to first responders and, essential employees or whoever happened to come through that door.
What started with soups turned into a gathering place for people in the neighborhood.
This has been the best experience.
It's different, to have like a grandma cooking for you, someone else's grandma. It's nice. The last time we were here, there was a Sri Lankan nonna, and the food was just fantastic. So you get that international thing.
Just last month, the restaurant finally reopening.
To be back in the kitchen, to welcome customers back.
Yes.
How does it feel?
Beautiful. I feel very good because I don't want to stay home. I want to come to work.
I miss this restaurant. I miss the people, the customers.
Each Nona on staff preparing their specialty dish whenever they're in the kitchen. Nona Maria's specialty, zucchini parmigiano, which she agreed to show us firsthand. The vibe in the kitchen? Just what you'd expect from a Nona who's 87 years young. With the patience of a saint.
Bravo.
The food delicious, the kitchen staff as diverse as they are delightful. And the small Staten Island restaurant bringing them all together, America strong.
I love it. Will Gans, great dancing, and love to all those Nonas out there cooking us great meals. Well, before we go, we have some wonderful news to report. Our ABC News Live family is growing. Our Diane Macedo and her husband Tom have welcomed a baby girl. Diane says the whole family is back at home, and so far, her 2-year-old is reacting, as she says, surprisingly well to his new role as big brother. From all of us here at ABC News Live, congratulations, Diane, and to your whole family. A big welcome to your new baby girl. And that does it for this hour. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.